For this video, we're going to learn how to convert from exponential form to radical form. All right, let's look at how an exponential form looks like. So as you can see here, we have an example of an exponential form. You have here the variable with the exponents. That's why it's called exponential form, because it has the exponent, and our exponent here right now is a fraction, 5/2. That's how an exponential form looks like. For radical form, we have here an example of a radical form. You have here a square root of x raised to 5. Okay, so that's how a radical form looks like. For our radical form, we have some terminologies that we need to learn. First, you see this number inside the square root symbol. This number inside, you call it the radicand. Radicand. All right? And this symbol here, you call it the radical sign. The radical sign. Okay, and there's actually a number right here. It's invisible. It's actually invisible too. You see that invisible too. You call that number as index, right? So take note. There's a number here, invisible too. We call it index, and you have this radicand with the exponent, and then the radical sign. For our exponential form, let's go back to x raised to 5/2. Remember that index that I'm talking about in radical form? The index, the number here, invisible too, that's actually the number that you see at the bottom of the fraction exponent. That's actually the index. So if you see that the number here is 2, then you should have used the square root over here. And you don't need to put that 2 here because it's invisible. Okay, but if you see that this number is 3, that's the time that you will write a number 3 here. So we only write numbers here that are greater than 2. So it can be 3, 4, 5, and so on. Okay, so if the number is 2, we call this as a square root. But if it's 3, it becomes just like this. So we call it a cube root. Okay, if it's 4, it becomes fourth root, and so on. Now let's look at an example on converting from exponential form to a radical form. So we have here x raised to 3/2. First, look at the denominator. Remember, the number at the denominator is your index, right? It's your index. If that's a 2, it means you're going to use a square root. Okay? Now, what's inside is your variable and the number at the top. So x3. So just put it inside the square root.
So the radical form is the square root of x cubed.
Another example, we have x raised to 4/3. So we're going to convert it to radical form. So first, look at the number at the bottom. You have a 3. Now, if the number there is bigger than 2, which means like 3, so you have to use the cube root symbol. This is the cube root symbol. Just put this symbol here and put a number 3 right here, cube root. And then what's inside is your variable in the number at the top. So that's x4. So x4. So you will read this as cube root of x4. And for our final example, we have x raised to 1/4, exponential form, convert to radical form. So look at the number at the bottom, we have 4. So that means I'm going to use the fourth root. It's just the square root symbol and put a 4 right here. And what's inside is your variable and the number at the top, which is x raised to 1 or simply x, because we know that there's an invisible 1 right here. So that's the radical form.